Samuel West, Dr. Samuel West. Samuel, how are you, man?
Excellent. It's a sunny, beautiful morning here in Spain.
Right, and thank you for your time.
Definitely,
You
my
are
pleasure.
an unique individual I'm interviewing today because you are interested about failure. So, and I also failed many times in my life, and definitely you have failed many times in your life. Otherwise, how can that love relation will flower? So, first is what is failure now?
When I started the Museum of Failure, failure was focused on innovation failures, like new product development failures, design failures, etc. But since it's almost 10 years now, I've taken a more general stance on it. And I still love the organizational psychology definition of failure, which is that failure is a deviation from expected or desired outcomes. So you do something, you invest money, time, prestige, resources into some project, something where you expect certain outcomes. You expect money, you expect fame, you expect something out of those activities. And then when that doesn't happen, or there's other results that you're not as happy with, that would be a failure. So that it's not only about money. You can have, you can make efforts in your personal life that fail. You can do it academically. So failure is basically it's a deviation from expected outcomes.
So, is there any parameter like some failure break you and some failure bend you?
I mean, there are good sort of topographies of failure or classifications of failure, and these are also from an organizational context. But I think they're also applicable in our personal lives. There's failure that could have been like prevented, avoidable failure, and that's the failure that is almost always negative. So that's failure because of incompetence, failure because of sloppiness, failure because of if you would have done it right, if you would have done it properly, then it wouldn't have failed. So those are failures that you could have avoided. Those are always going to be negative failures. And then you have the good failure. I call it bad failure versus good failure. And good failure is when you push yourself and you try to push the envelope forward. You experiment, you explore, you try new things. You also fail when you try to learn new things and attempt new, entrepreneurial projects, products, etc. And that kind of failure is good. So it's still failure, but it's done in the name of progress or to make yourself or the world a better place. Those kind of failures, I think we have to reevaluate. Those are good failures. To answer your question, certain things break you or make you. It depends. If you have a life that's full of the bad failure, you should probably change your approach. You should probably get it right. But if you're failing by continually exploring and experimenting, it's hard for me to see that as a negative thing.
Now, I will divide the conversation into two ways. First is individual, because you are also a clinical psychologist. And next, I will come to the other section, which is organizational. So, for individual, first thing, we born, okay, our guardian kind of, helping us to grow initially. How much important that initial attachment with the caregiver really manifest in life down the line?
As you're aware, there's a considerable amount of research related to attachment, bad attachment, weak attachment styles, the various dysfunctional attachment styles versus a more healthy attachment style. And I mean, the research definitely suggests that our attachment styles do affect us throughout our entire lives. Yes. One project I was involved with a few years ago, developing a protocol, a treatment program for entrepreneurial failure. When an entrepreneur fails in their business, it has massive consequences. It can have massive consequences also on the person's mental health, obviously. One thing that's interesting there from attachment theory, entrepreneurs who are attached to the identity of them as successful entrepreneurs as opposed to profession, like if you have an entrepreneur who's only an entrepreneur and attached to this notion of the identity of an entrepreneur, and they fail, they fare much worse than a person who has healthy relationships, has an identity that's more nuanced, and is an entrepreneur. So the classic example would be a professional who has, a doctor or whatever, some IT professional who has like skills and layers on top of that entrepreneurship. When that fails, they're still a person. They still have value in their own minds, as opposed to someone who's only, I'm a founder, I'm a startup, I'm a businessman. Then you fail. Then it's your entire life is a failure. You see the
So,
difference there? Like how, and those attachment styles are sort of, those patterns exist from early on in our lives.
so that means how many pillars you have in your life you built on, kind of.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
So this is kind of a nurture part of our growing up, right? Okay. If I talk
Definitely.
about the nature, I mean, our core biology, which is our personality, how much that biological element of that personality comes into play that in adolescence or in adulthood, there will be some psychological dysfunction.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's a very sort of wide area. One of the sort of debates within personalities, does this construct even exist? Can we talk of personality, even personality disorders, if you go into psychiatry? Do they exist, or are we always creating our personalities in the context we're in? So you are not the same personality in a business meeting as you are with your children. This idea that we have personalities that are cemented and unmalleable, it's not always a useful tool to work with. So I'm not saying personality doesn't exist. I'm a psychologist. Yeah, it exists, and it's useful in some ways. But I think looking at personality as something that's cemented early on in our lives doesn't really do ourselves justice. Like, we are capable of adapting, and we do it all the time. And even personality wise, we change dependent on the context that we're in. I'm not saying, oh, throw out the entire personality psychology department. It's a non-contextual way of looking at our psychological makeup and our behaviors.
So let's say if something got whack, definitely we are growing up. So after a point of time, things kind of comes down to that individual, that how he or she is perceiving those things. So when something got really off rail, how a person can, okay, internally we might feel that something is not right. We don't use that intuition or gut properly in many cases.
Yeah.
But in that kind of situation, what an individual can do.
So you're speaking of like in a crisis situation or in the context of entrepreneurial failure, what are the more functional or more healthier ways to adapt and to handle the scenario?
Yes, and some strength kind of slowly building up within ourselves so that next time when that is coming, we know we can face it chin up.
I've thought about this a lot, specifically in entrepreneurial failure. If you have an image of yourself as a smart, successful person who never fails, I'm exaggerating here, but if you have this self image, right? And then your reality is that you continuously meet obstacles and things don't turn out as you expect or wish for, then you have to sort of reconcile with yourself, like, what's going on? You're maybe not that smart. You're maybe not that much of a hard worker. Maybe there's something internally there that needs to be adjusted. Usually, or typically, people who are flexible, who have a psychological flexibility to be able to say, in certain situations, certain behaviors are appropriate, certain thoughts, certain ways of viewing reality. Whereas in other contexts, it's not. And if you have a flexibility there, you can adapt quickly to the changing environment. And if you fail as an entrepreneur, yes, then you're failing in one aspect. If we look at the money, then the flexibility means that you're willing to explore other avenues. You told me before the podcast, the recording, that you tried many different avenues before you found success. That's a flexibility.
I haven't found it yet, man.
You're still on the journey. But what I mean is, like, if people are not flexible in psychology, in their emotions, and even in entrepreneurial endeavors, then you risk more devastating failure. But if you're willing to adapt, it might take some time, but you will find something that works out. I think about the metaphor or example I like to use is, pandas, the cute pandas in China, they're on the verge of extinction because they only eat bamboo, a certain type of bamboo, right? And they only can live in a certain physical environment. And they only eat this bamboo, and the bamboo isn't actually have a lot of energy or nutrition, but that's all they do. And so they can't survive. They're absolutely dependent on zoos to survive. Whereas cockroaches and rats, they're everywhere and they're doing great. Anywhere you look, there's cockroaches and rats and humans, because the three of us are extremely well equipped to adapt to the environment and find success in the most niche areas, unlike the panda or the koala, who are hopelessly specific. If you look at entrepreneurial failure, if an entrepreneur is obsessed and limited to one area of business and one approach to their business life or entrepreneurial life, they're going to have a hard time, because even if they find something that works, the world changes next year, right? And it's all gone. So you have to continually be experimenting and exploring new avenues. And that's what cockroaches, rats, and humans are good at.
So to have that flexibility, exposing yourself to different experiences, will that help?
Yes.
Not necessarily they have to be related. It's just a different thing, different exposure, different openness.
Yes. Our society, our education system, and corporate or business world tells us that we have to specialize, right? And that does make sense, of course. What's lost here is what's called range, that people who have a wide range of skills, a wide range of interests, generalists, if you would say, they're always going to be more adaptable than a panda. So the strength comes from that range. It does seem counterintuitive, because specialize in this special IT niche or specialize in this medical niche, then you'll be successful. That is true in an environment that doesn't change a lot. But when the environment changes a lot, you have to have a wider skill set.
It's not a direct question, but when 2012-13, as I was explaining you, I went through depression and I tried to contribute in this field. No one was listening until COVID hit. Perception changed.
Yeah.
Somewhere I feel that this holistic well-being, it's in that very nascent stage. The analogy is, let's say you are a tooth specialist, okay, for example. Now you're specializing and specializing and specializing. So basically you will ultimately become what? Third tooth specialist, something like that.
Yes.
So whatever, number of teeth you have, you will have that many doctors, which is not possible.
Yes.
So I guess now this holistic well-being, because I was reading on a research which says whoever has asthma, there is a correlation, they went through trauma in their childhood. Do you think this holistic well-being, it's about to come because we can't sustain with this customized approach?
Yes, holistic medicine has always been behind sort of the traditional school book medical approach or worldview. But the problem with the holistic is it often goes into pseudoscience. Because it's so interconnected, it's very difficult to have high quality medical or psychological research in holistic medicine, because there's too many variables. So it becomes very messy science, and as such, it's very prone to pseudoscience and nonsense, which does not do holistic medicine any favors. So holistic medicine, yes, some of the best doctors I've worked with managing chronic pain, migraines, very, very difficult, heavy depressions and anxiety. The doctors I've worked with the best ones have been generalists. It's almost like to see us both physically and psychologically as holistically rather than specifically treating specific disorders. I don't know if that makes sense, but like when I think about my work history, working with doctors who are and other psychologists who have a wider scope, wider approach to health, it seems always to be much more successful. I thought about it the other day. Okay, I get sick. I'm going to do medical here. So I have a disease, and it's very specific. It's for my eye, right? And it's specific. I don't want to go to a generalist. Then I want a specialist in this eye because there's something wrong with my left eye, right? So I want the best doctor in the world who specializes on my left eye to take a look at it, because that's a very finite, it's a very isolated problem, and I want it fixed, right? So then I want a specialist. If I have another condition where I'd feel unhappy with my life, or I feel depressed, which is extremely messy, there's no one cure. Like there is no one solution. I don't know if the specialist is as strong of a treatment as someone who has a more holistic approach. It's like the messier the problem, the more general sort of holistic approach I want to see. If I had a specific problem, I want a specific solution, yes. But if I have, which is usually the case, a mixed bag of mental unhealth, then I want to see someone who has a wider approach.
When I was writing my last book, 8 Billion Clients, I kind of argued, and that I wrote it because of two things. I wrote it that mental health is more important than physical health. Okay, why I said that? After that period, I practiced meditation and all these things. So there is always inner life, an inner quality of your being, which is absolutely not related to what is your physical conditions.
Yeah.
As a psychologist, how you see it, physical health or mental health first? Or we know both coexist each other, but what is your opinion on that?
The fundamental question would be, what is health? Is health an absence of disease? Is that what we're dealing with? So one way of looking at it is like, oh, I can be healthy only if I remove all the disease. And this is equal whether it's physical or psychological. And we know that doesn't exist. No one is perfectly physically or psychologically without disease, right? Without disorders. It has never existed. So that ambition comes from the way we've medicalized everything, is because, there's a pill for every disease. There's a treatment for every disease. In that ambition, like, if I only get rid of my anxiety, then I will have a life. If I only get rid of my depression, then I will have a healthy life. If my leg stops hurting, then I will get a good life. That has not served us very well. Depression, anxiety, the two main categories of mental ill health. There are no simple solutions to those. For once, let's just say maybe there's something that we have to accept rather than treat, as is pain. If you're over the age of 17, you're going to have back pain. And that's just the reality. Removing all pain, all suffering from our existence mainly cost us more pain and more suffering. I think finding like how to accept and how to deal with what we have, open up the notion that a good life doesn't mean a life without pain, without mental or physical illness, because we're going to have that anyway. Yeah. But to answer your question, sorry, I went off on a tangent there, but to answer your question, like mental or physical, I can't really separate them much, because if you have a mental, if you're psychologically healthy, well functioning, but you have chronic pain, it's going to affect everything you do. Likewise, if you're physically very healthy, but you're suffering mentally, you're not going to enjoy your perfectly functioning body, right? I find it difficult to separate those two. Although I'm biased because I'm a psychologist, I would say mental health is extremely important. I've worked with patients who have extreme physical handicaps, disabilities, physical suffering, pain, and they live fantastically well-functioning lives. They psychologically can handle their situation.
Before ending this chapter, is there any two, three things you can mention that an individual can do to be in optimum psychological health?
I love acceptance and commitment therapy is the term. There's a lot of self-help books within this genre, and it's a modern version of cognitive behavioral therapy, very well empirically supported. It's psychology. There's always going to be some quasi science in there as well, but by and large, acceptance and commitment therapy is very successful empirically, but it also makes a lot of sense. Traditional cognitive behavioral therapy is, if you're depressed, then cognitive behavioral therapy traditionally is about analyzing your thoughts. Like, I feel like shit. I am not worth anything. Nothing is going to work out for me. Nobody likes me. Those are thoughts of depression, right? Some examples. Traditional cognitive behavioral therapy would then take those thoughts and attempt to change those thoughts, like try to get you to think more functional thoughts, try to reason with those thoughts, and try to make them more based in reality and more functional. I'm generalizing here, but that's the basic state of it. And if you work with the body sensations of lack of energy, lack of motivation, you would also try to work specifically with those to change those thoughts and those physical sensations. And that's since the 1980s. Acceptance and commitment therapy takes a different approach, saying these thoughts that we have, a depressed person has these depressed thoughts and feelings. We can't really do anything about them. Just let them be. They're not dangerous. They're just in our brains, making no sense whatsoever. But we take them seriously. We're like, nobody likes me. I'm a failure. Okay? That's a thought. Acceptance and commitment therapy says, okay, let that thought just exist in your head. It doesn't matter. And go brush your teeth and go have coffee with a friend with those thoughts. You don't have to get rid of those thoughts. You can meet a friend, you can go to work, you can engage in life with those thoughts. You don't have to remove them, which is, by the way, impossible. It's about acceptance. This was a sloppy example, but it's about accepting your thoughts, accepting those feelings, and getting on with your life, not trying to remove them or change them or adapt them. I've worked a lot with pain. Chronic pain, it's absolutely terrible thing to suffer. There is no cure. There is no way other than temporary relief. And acceptance-based therapies are accept that pain. It's terrible. Accept that pain and get on, like play with your child. Spend time with your spouse. Do that with your pain rather than trying to get rid of the pain and then live your life. The commitment part is about trying to, find those activities in your life where according to your values that are important to you, and then to do those while accepting the thoughts, the physical sensations in your body. It's a new take on cognitive behavioral therapy. It's not so new anymore. It came out the 99 or 2000, so it's not that new anymore, but it's been very, very successful. And meditation, mindfulness is a big aspect of that. How are you going to accept your thoughts if you're not aware of them? How are you going to accept your physical sensations if you can't be present in them? So mindfulness is mindful meditation is a part of that as well. Check it out. It's an interesting, it combines sort of, I hate to say it, but empirical spirituality in a way that makes sense for psychological issues.
For entrepreneurs, when they are in blues, let's say, for different reasons of failures and stuff, from your experience, how much is it absolutely financial, or like money definitely is a factor, but the way we perceive money in reality, is money that really big factor?
I mean, money is a huge factor, of course. What was it saying? Money is like air. When you have the money, it's okay, but when you don't have money, it's the only thing you think about. So to say that money is not important and someone is struggling and stressed because of their financial situation or lack of money, that's a slap in the face. But our society becomes obsessed. We always want more. So even if you have enough money to pay your rent and to live a decent life We always want more, and the entrepreneur always wants much more, and it's a driving force. So money is definitely, we can't ignore that. But I think I'm absolutely convinced that we are obsessed with it, with economic success, and we ignore other aspects of our lives that are also important. Mainly because money is so easy to measure. It's nice numbers, you know? It's very difficult to measure. Are you happy? Do you have a good relationship with your children? Are you a good parent? Is your relationship with your spouse or partner, is that good? That's difficult to quantify. So we measure money instead and chase money because it's so easy.
Now, when we talk about the organizations, though I'm out of any corporate world for last 12, 13 years, but when I listen to
You
my
haven't missed
friends,
anything.
I have no regret. Yeah, I don't want to go back. And when I listen to my friends and when I was there, all these soft skills, creative thinking, leadership, all these big talks are there. Okay. Sounds good, logical, but in reality, it's like 100 years apart. How you see it, or what is your take on it?
So I see the corporate world as its own sort of universe with its own set of rules. I'm not into football. I don't get it. I don't understand what is fun. Or Formula One, it's even worse. I just don't understand what is so interesting about watching cars drive around in a circle, right? And there's a lot of money involved. There's Monaco. I just saw an image of all the yachts stationed outside of Monaco for the Formula One race. And I don't understand it. I don't get it. And I don't get rewarded by it. I don't think it's fun. I don't speak the language. I have nothing to do with that world. But there's a lot of people who really enjoy it. They know all about the latest drivers and this engines and I don't know, the tires and the parties and whatever associated with the Formula One ecosystem. And if you're in it, you're rewarded. If you speak the right language and you go to the right parties, I guess you get some kind of enjoyment out of it. I can't understand it, but it makes sense within that little crazy ecosystem. And I can't see the corporate world as any different. If you're in that world, those reward mechanisms, the contingencies of that world does make sense to you. And if people enjoy it, they should participate in it. Absolutely. I think it's a bit precarious to think that that's life. Like it's as stupid as saying that Formula One is life. Like it makes no sense. Yeah, I play the corporate game when I need to play the corporate game. Absolutely. Just like if I went to the Formula One race, I would also look at the cars drive past and say, wow, he's driving super fast, isn't he? Yeah, it's a game. And you can choose to participate in the game or you can choose to not participate in the game. I chose not to participate in Formula One. I have other games that I play.
Now, another thing is with AI and all, definitely more people will do their career shift. I have done career shift few times and it
Yeah,
is so bloody difficult. I didn't know about that. I just thought this is normal. And during this journey, there is a thing, and especially because in mental health, lived experience is a big thing. Lived experience, this particular skill is very underrepresented and undervalued
totally.
in corporate world or in any world for that matter.
Yeah.
How we can like enhance that so that this real like heartwarm people can come and change the paradigm.
There's a lot of discussions going on right now about sort of rewilding. I don't know if that's the only term, but there's similar terms and concepts of if so many of us have to change our careers and by and large a lot of our lives as well because of the AI developments and what's going on, then the non-digital experiences, the wilder experiences of genuine human contact, which is messy, not always enjoyable, it's real, and contact with nature, which is also not always enjoyable. There's ants and there's mosquitoes and snakes. That becomes more important because we live our lives on these screens, and there's a how far are we going to go before we realize that maybe we should value those lived experiences or those non-curated experiences of life higher. So I think the discussions that are going on now about this are more interesting than they have been in a long time. And AI, bad or good, expected shift is definitely driving that sort of curiosity in having real experiences, good and bad experiences, both.
So we are almost in the end of it. So the last question kind of I would want to ask you, which is on loneliness.
Yeah,
Now, loneliness is epidemic and it will increase down the line.
absolutely.
A lot of elderly people are dying because of despair, and that number is also increasing. And that is also from individual perspective, it's kind of a failure, they are thinking.
Absolutely.
So please tell us something, to pep up our audience about loneliness.
The price of human connection is annoyance. People are annoying. Like social interactions are messy and they're not always satisfying. People are annoying, they're irritating, they're human, they're good and bad. And what we've done globally, quite few exceptions, is we've cut off those social interactions because people are annoying, and we've isolated ourselves. We are social animals, right? Evolutionary, we are definitely social animals. And throughout history, being alone has been a luxury. 100 years ago, you would live in a house, and so would I, with multi generations, grandma, and everybody would be there, and 20 kids, right? To get time for yourself alone was a luxury. So we strive for it. We've been seeking that. And now we have it. And then we get the negative side, which is loneliness. I like to see a parallel there with food. Evolutionary, we didn't have food. We were always hungry and we like high calorie foods, and they were a luxury. But now there's high calorie foods everywhere. And our problem is we eat too much. And now we have to actively eat less calorie foods, more fiber, rougher foods, and we have to actively choose that for our health. It's the same with social interactions. We've eliminated a lot of the annoyances by not being with other people. And the downside of that is loneliness. So we have to actively choose to be social. And it's so easy to not be social, whether you're an elderly person who is annoyed with people and choose to be alone, and then 30 years later you wonder why you have no friends and your life sucks. Or if you're a young person, it's equally a problem with a 25-year-old who chooses to live their life online and wonders why they're depressed. So we are social animals and we've ignored that. We need to rewild that as well. We have to rediscover that. And there's a lot of good trends. There's a lot of good movements that are focusing on giving our attention more to, well, social life for human connected, being connected. And I think it's healthy.
So on that, we should end our podcast here. Thank you, Samuel. Thank you for your
Thank
time.
you.
And
Thank you.
hopefully one day I'll be able to go to your Museum of Failure.
Yes, we might bring it to Australia. Nothing is scheduled, but there's a lot of interest in Museum of Failure in Australia. So I wouldn't be surprised if it actually happens.
Excellent. Let me know. I'll be
Awesome.
definitely there.
Awesome. Thank you for a good chat.